Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and it's Friday.
Wait, what?
No, it's not. It's Monday. And joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all our listeners to... What day is it again?
Oh, it's definitely Monday.
Welcome to Monday. Timstradamus, I have a joke for you.
Hit me.
Since the weather has been a little kooky, sometimes it seems to be really sunny, sometimes it seems to be a little rainy, let me go ahead and hit you with a weather joke. Why shouldn't you fight with a rain cloud?
Because it'll just rain on your day.
I mean, close. It'll just storm out on you.
Okay, it'll storm out.
I was afraid that joke would miss.
The cringe is killing me.
Yes.
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for that.
Well, Voyse.
Well, Timstradamus.
It looks like we have another shout out to make.
We do. We have another patron. Welcome, Mafi Draws, to the Tea Club.
Yes, welcome to the Tea Club.
I said it first.
So, Voyse, what have you crafted for us this morning?
I have brewed for you a delicious lavender Earl Grey tea.
Oh, yeah. That's really good.
I put in that dash of cream just to make it a little smooth.
5 out of 5.
All right. Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your morning brew, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for telling my sister's boyfriend that he's just a guest in our house? My 16 male sister, 26, has been dating a guy named Jake, not his real name, 27, for 6 months now. My parents were very happy that she finally has a boyfriend because before, she said she didn't feel like dating anyone yet. I, on the other hand, as a brother, was a little concerned because, of course, I don't want my sister to be hurt or harmed. Yesterday was our dad's birthday, and my sister invited Jake to visit us for the first time. We have a family tradition that when it's Dad's birthday, everyone over 15 has to make sure to drink the cherry tincture that Dad made himself. It's not strong at all, and even the kids don't get drunk on it. But when Mom poured it for Jake, he started to say he didn't drink it. Mom said that it wasn't strong at all and that it was delicious, and that he could just take one sip if he didn't want to drink the whole glass. But Jake kept saying that he never drank, not even a sip of anything alcoholic. Then I said he was only a guest in our home and should honor our traditions. Jake blushed and said he wasn't allowed any alcohol for medical reasons. I said that one sip would do nothing and that he was disrespecting our dad. My sister was embarrassed and asked Jake to take a sip. Dad was embarrassed too and said it was okay and he wouldn't be offended if Jake didn't drink the tincture. Finally, Jake gave in and took a tiny sip of the tincture. Spoiler, he spent the whole evening with us after that and nothing bad happened to him. After he left for his place, a small argument started in our house. My dad thought I acted like a selfish child. My mom didn't see anything wrong with what I did. Neither did I. My sister looks like she hasn't decided which side to take yet. Am I the a-hole?
Well, looks like we have some gooberish behavior to get us kicked off into Monday with.
Just a little.
I can understand the intent of it all being it's a birthday party, it's tradition, it's those type of things. But our OP forgot that just because it's a tradition within your family does not mean when other people on the outside come in have to either know about it or partake in it, especially if they're uncomfortable with it. I'm shocked that the entire family basically, outside of, I think it was just the dad.
Correct.
Because even the girlfriend gives in to their peer pressure about peer pressuring him. Maybe there's not a whole lot of boundaries, it sounds, within this family. Because if you're willing to push someone into drinking that doesn't want to, even if it is, they're saying it's very little. It sounds like a great drink. I would have partaken. You wouldn't even have to have begged me. But that's not everyone. So 100% OP, you are definitely the a-hole in this situation. You need to learn how to take no.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. A lot of people came out and said if somebody doesn't feel comfortable drinking, no should be the end. In fact, there was a Redditor that actually came forward with food phobias, and they have actually in the comments section enlightened us to their food phobia, which they have avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. It essentially limits a lot of what they can eat out. And while they actually enjoy going to their local tavern or pub to hang out with friends, their out drink of choice is milk. They were actually called out on it. And for them, it puts them into such a spotlight of embarrassment and almost shame for something that they can't control or don't feel comfortable doing, that our Redditor came out and said nobody should ever have to feel that way. I know how it feels to be in that type of spotlight. And you did that to somebody that you're hoping will stay with your sister and be part of the family. That's not a good light on you. A lot of Redditors came forward saying that they have had trouble staying sober, unfortunately, due to alcoholism, and that one small sip can just spiral them into drinking excessively again. For a lot of people, that is a fear. I know when I was younger, I was truly afraid of that just because I know my family history when it came to drinking was very bad and excessive. I'm lucky that I don't have those tendencies, but I think it's more because I'm aware of them.
We've also worked through them in understanding that we're not our parents.
Exactly.
You can't have fun, just do it responsibly. It's also how we taught our son. If someone can't accept that you're saying no to a situation, you walk away.
Well, let's go to our next story and see about friends. Am I the a-hole for telling my child-free friends they are cruel to me? I, 33 female, was child-free and wanted to stay that way for most of my life, and all my friends are the same. My partner and I talked a lot about pros and cons of having kids, and we both agreed I wouldn't abort if I ended up pregnant, but we won't actively work on kids. However, in the last year, we wanted kids more and more. First, we wanted to foster. Adoption is nearly impossible in our country. And then we sort of ended up pregnant. I am due to give birth soon, and my friends are being dicks about it. I told them off and called them cruel, and they called me a selfish a-hole. For context, since I have been purposefully child-free most of my life, I am aware of the downsides of having kids. I personally think a lot of people are being unwise when they decide to have kids, unless population is generally better, but I never ever said it to someone's face, especially when they were expecting. One cannot know what are people's motives to have children or to not have children, and I never judged. Whether you have offsprings or not is completely irrelevant to me to see you as a person. When I got pregnant, I was delighted but scared naturally. I am an anxious person by nature, and I always talk through my things with my friends who were always there for me, until the topic centered around my pregnancy. For the past 7 months of pregnancy, every time I mentioned something bad relating to pregnancy, like having nausea, back pain, insomnia, my friends jokingly said, "Well, you got yourself into that shit, now suffer." First, it was a joke, but sometimes it gets really hard, and considering we always whine about something, one of my friends the other day literally cried because she missed a beginning of a movie in cinema, and nobody said anything to her. I don't think me whining about discomfort of carrying a baby is too much. Lately, they even upped the game, saying stuff like they won't come by our place when the baby is there. I mean, where should I put the baby? And saying stuff like, "Nice knowing you. Now you won't be able to go to the concert with us. Even though when the concert happens, baby will be 7 months old and I have tickets and plans to go." One went so far to tell me they don't even want to meet my baby, and that's when I lost it and called them all cruel. This resulted in backlash, calling me selfish a-hole because I decided to have kids and I shouldn't be imposing the kid on them. The thing is, I'm not imposing anything. The kid will simply be there, and I never ever mentioned anything about them babysitting or looking after or in any way, shape, or form being included in baby's life. Just think I am going through something life-changing, whether it was my decision or not, and just don't want them to dump shit on me whenever I mention anything related to my pregnancy or baby. I don't know. They all made some bad decisions in their lives. We all did. And we all were there for each other. And this feels like I am their personal landfill because of their own issues with natalism/antinatalism. Opinions?
I want to ask this before we get started. How old are they? I think they're in their 30s. correct?
33.
Okay. And I'm guessing all the friends are somewhere in that ballpark.
I would assume so, yes.
Now, do the friends have kids themselves?
No. At least this group of friends do not.
This answers a lot. You have a certain group of friends that you meet in your early 20s and you start growing together through life. And some of them have very strong opinions like that, where apparently kids are the death sentence to your social life. They are not, but you can have those opinions if you like. I'm not going to sit here and try to sway people on kids or not. You're allowed to live the way you want to. But it sounds like her friends don't think that way. The friends that she's made all dislike that now. And it's weird the way they're using it, because they're saying just because she's having a child, now she can't partake in anything that they do. Imagine telling someone in the middle of their pregnancy, when they've been supporting you and been a good friend, that now they suck and they cannot be a part of anything and good luck, see you later, or I'm not coming to see you anymore if the child's around. What level of maturity are you at?
None level of maturity.
OP, your friends are gross. Take this as the exit sign. Understand that there will be other friends. So in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely not the a-hole for this. However, there was a lot of discussion in the comments section because our OP actually posted before this another instance, not regarding the friends, but regarding another issue. And this issue was their apparent disconnect and disappointment in finding out the gender of their child. Our OP is very straightforward. They said that they're a feminist, that they're a leftist, and apparently they were hoping for a little girl. However, the scans came back and it said that they were having a little boy, and they just felt absolutely disgusted with how they were feeling and the absolute disappointment of finding out that she was having a little boy rather than a little girl. This bled into this AITA moment where a lot of individuals were coming out and essentially calling our OP a terrible mother before actually being a mother. Now, the good part is our OP did say in the comments that they have sought professional help. They are trying to figure out where all of this comes from and to correct it, at least before the child comes. Additionally, there was a lot of individuals that said this is actually perfectly natural for a lot of parents, whether male or female, to experience. That going through these sort of growths and understanding and why it is that you seek and want this and that it should not impact how you love your child is extremely important for every parent to kind of go through. Now, of course, the first and foremost is making sure that your child is healthy. And from what our OP said, all of the scans came back that the child is 100% good. But for the individuals that barred away that one post and spoke just on this, they said it exactly as you said, Timstradamus. These are not friends to you anymore. They have a different way of looking. And there were actually other Redditors that came out saying, I'm child free, but that doesn't mean that I treat friends that have children badly. And there seems to be this really interesting sections of Reddit concerning child free and people within those groups where you have individuals who are child free who essentially despise individuals that have children and just children in general. And then you have other sections that just want to be child free, not to be made guilty about them being child free, but are happy when there are children around, such as having nieces and friends with kids. I find it funny that you have a section of the population that despises children when in my mind, all I keep thinking is, you do realize you were a child first, right?
So are we saying that within both of those viewpoints, having kids and not having kids, that there are subsections within those that view each other very radically?
Correct.
Why care that much about other people's lives and their opinions about what you do? I find that so silly. Like, I understand that if you're child free, have that and be happy with it. I understand though, if you want kids, have that and be happy with it. But to go to the extent of making other people feel bad about a choice they made in their life that you didn't, why go to that point?
I think, at least when I read into some of these comments and how people essentially show who they are, it's almost as if they're in a box And if people aren't in that same type of box, it makes them wrong. I think it's a very narrowed way of viewing the world. And I don't know, it stems a lot of hate.
Sure, I don't know why people would waste their time with that. Hate takes a lot of energy.
You simplified that.
It does.
Let us go to our next AITA story, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this next issue. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my trans brother to my bachelorette party or bridal shower? I, 26 female, have a sibling, 22 male, that was born with female genitalia and raised as my sister. After a lot of therapy, I have finally grieved the loss of my sister and accepted my brother for who he is and wants to be. The thing that, in my opinion, though, makes this a little weird and has been a big part of my therapy is that my brother still looks and dresses more like a tomboyish girl than an actual boy. He has expressed no interest in taking hormones or doing any surgeries. He just buzzed his hair short, shops in the men's section, and gives you the silent treatment for extended periods of time if you ever refer to him as she/her or his dead name. Well, I'm getting married and will soon be having a bridal shower as well as a bachelorette party. Last week I was visiting my hometown and went to a family dinner with my dad, sister, and 2 brothers. One born my brother, the other my trans brother. At dinner, I was talking about how excited I was to start planning the bachelorette and bridal shower. My sister asked me who I'm going to invite and what kind of party I wanted to do. I said some friends as well as her, and then my brother says, "What about me?" There was this huge awkward silence, and then my other brother, trying to keep peace, was like, "Aren't bachelorettes just for women? Us 3 will find something fun to do," meaning him, my dad, and trans brother. My trans brother then looked at me and said, "What about the bridal shower?" And my brother says, "Also for girls." And I just kind of looked at him and took a sip of water. Then my trans brother proceeded to get up from the table, say he was finished, and go upstairs. We haven't spoken since. Am I really the a-hole here? Isn't this what he wanted? Wouldn't it have been upsetting to him if I did invite him and then he would have been like, "You're not respecting my gender identity"? I need more therapy. I don't know. It's so hard to accept him when he does stuff like this, and I'm truly trying my hardest. Am I the a-hole?
All right. Well, we'll start with this. I don't believe there are a-holes in this story. I think our OP was respecting her brother's wishes because I do understand that we're talking about a bachelorette party. Although a lot of those spaces are for women, I have seen where men do get invited as well, but that is a individual person's decision to make. That's not every single bachelorette party or every single on the bride's side situation. And on her brother's side, it sounds like he was very much either caught off guard or confused about where it is he fits in now. And that's why I say I don't think there are a-holes. Everyone's just trying to do their best to respect each other. But I would like to ask, does she ever fill in anyone about if her brother, because she says it herself, she's in therapy. Is her brother now in therapy figuring out what it is he's trying to do with life?
No, at least not to what our OP has put down. But there are a lot of Redditors that came out saying that it sounds like based on this conflict and confusion and potential insecurity from our OP's brother that they might need to seek some therapy to help them find where they fit in.
Hopefully they can at least talk further about everything. And it doesn't sound like there's hate here. It just sounds like there's a caring sister who was trying.
So let me go ahead and give you the consensus on Reddit. Redditors say our OP's not the a-hole. And they put it simply as this. Our OP was coming from a place of respect. They were trying to truly respect their brother's gender identity now, given everything that's happened. Now, as I said before, Redditors did point out that maybe her brother needs to go to therapy to figure out where he fits in everything. Other individuals were saying it shouldn't be a punishment to our OP for trying to do the right thing. There were a lot of individuals that say you can't have it both ways. That's not the way that it works. And there are, I guess you could say, circles of friends where it can work that way, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be forced on other people who don't want to operate in that same capacity. Now, let me go ahead and read to you an update from our OP. Update. So after seeing a lot of these comments, I called my brother this morning to try to break the silence and see where he was coming from. The first call he declined. So I texted him saying I wanted to talk about the bachelorette and bridal shower to see where he was coming from because I know he's upset. No response. I called 2 more times, and on the second time he answered. Before I could even open my mouth, he starts going into a big speech about how, like I've seen some people saying in the comments, it's 2024 and these events don't have to be gendered anymore. And I'm making an active choice not to include him by saying they're for women only, and that he just wanted to be able to celebrate me, and he's really hurt that I don't want that. I said it wasn't my intention to hurt him at all, and if he wants to come, I'm not going to bar him from doing that, but I'm also not going to open up the guest list and invite other men like my other brother, dad, etc., because it's my party, and I, for reasons completely unrelated to him, would like it to be the traditional women's only style. He then asked why I would make an exception for him and not my other brother. I said, well, my other brother doesn't want to come. He is not interested in a party for girls. And if you are, then just tell me and I will be so happy to invite you. Then he said that's not the reason and hung up on me. I think it's difficult, especially when it comes to this climate. You have individuals who are set in the way that they want to look at things. And then you have others who are flexible and trying to be understanding for both sides. I think, at least when I look at this, it's difficult. You can see where our OP is trying to reach out the olive branch. And I think in the end, for me, an invitation to a bachelorette party or a bridal shower is no different than a wedding. These are events that are specific to our OP. You shouldn't be made to feel bad about a celebration that you would like in your way. But at the same time, our OP is trying to open the door there. And yet our OP's brother has just shut it in our face. How is it that's the right way to navigate that? I would like to know what our commenters think. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this father-daughter relationship. Am I the a-hole for punishing my daughter for being smart with me when I assumed something? My 45 male, daughter, 12 female, recently made a racist comment about an Asian transfer student at her school. I corrected her on this and gave her a long and stern lecture on why assumptions are bad. I did not punish her, but warned her that if I ever received a report that such comments were made at school or towards the boy, she would be severely punished, because assuming things about people is wrong. Last week, my son, 17 male, was worried because for his team to get a higher seed, another team would have to lose to an awful team. Apparently this happened, and he was really excited last week, so I knew he would be this weekend too. So this morning, I asked him if his team was playing. He said no, but that the game today was going to be cold, quote, like -5 degrees or something, like -30 with wind chill or something like that. I was shocked at such temperatures and asked what teams were playing. He said Kansas City, so a team in Missouri, and Miami. I said where was the game? He paused when he was about to put cereal in his mouth and gave me an almost, are you serious sort of look? After maybe 5 seconds or so, it clicked that the second team was from Miami, Florida, and thus the game was obviously not there due to the temperature. So I said, oh, the Missouri place, and he nodded. My daughter, who was also at the dining table, and asked why I assumed the game would be in Missouri. I said, well, Miami will probably never be that cold. She said, yeah, but you assumed that. I said, no, I just know that Missouri is much colder than Miami, and Miami is hotter than Missouri, but a cold game would happen there. She said, so you assumed. I said, no, I know it's a simple fact. She said, how come my assumption wasn't then? I told her that was it, and I was taking away her phone for the whole week, even at school. She said that it was unfair. I said that I had already warned her about making such comments, and she was talking back. She yelled some unkind words, so I made it 1 week and the next weekend. And she stayed quiet and went to her room. My son thinks that maybe I went overboard, and I'm thinking he's right. Am I the a-hole?
So we got a 45-year-old dad and a 12-year-old daughter. And it sounds like our 12-year-old daughter has a little bit of hate in her heart. Only because it sounds like she's trying to defend her racism. The father doesn't exactly tell us what she says about her friend or someone at school who happens to be Asian. But he does say that she said some questionable things. Now, instead of outright punishing her in that moment, he says, and I'm guessing he's trying to correct his daughter, if it happens again or if I hear anything about that, then there will be punishment. So for me, it sounds like the dad needs to definitely get in on figuring out what the actual problem is with his daughter, because that's something that can fester and turn into other hatreds. I guess in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole. It simply sounds like your daughter wanted to be right about something. You assuming something about a game based off of location, and yes, of course, it's Florida. You're never going to get down into the negatives. You assuming that and your daughter assuming something racist about someone else are two very, very different things. I would definitely take that time, though, to start talking to her and working on some things. Don't let it just be a week of not phone sitting around doing nothing, because this could definitely be a way to give her food for thought on what is exactly you're trying to teach her. Because if you just slam her away in the room or go about it where she didn't learn from the lesson, then the habits are going to continue.
And it's going to get worse.
Yes.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is not the a-hole. Many Redditors pointed out, assuming something about a location is not the same as assuming something about a person. I must also point out there, even my own father has taught me not to assume, to strive to my hardest not to assume in all things. But that doesn't mean that all assumptions are incorrect. When you hear about having that gut reaction to most things, a lot of the times assuming is the thing that kind of saves your butt.
Trust your gut.
Now, I will put out there, most assumptions do tend to be incorrect, but there's a difference between being incorrect and just being wrong. And I have to say this, there is a difference between being right and wrong to being correct and incorrect. In this case, I think OP truly does need to clarify with his daughter, because she is ethically wrong in how she's doing things. Our assumption based on location could be correct or incorrect, but the right and wrong factor isn't there if you are right or wrong. And I think that's where a lot of people, this is the weird play on play words that we do with each other. If you look at the situation and whatever it is that you're doing, you question, is that really a kind thing to do? More than likely, you're hitting an ethical wall that you need to question who you are as a person when you do it.
She is 12, so hopefully we can fix the values, but you're definitely right. She's learning how to manipulate the words.
I do wish him a lot of luck, and I hope he does take to the advice on how you've said it. If you haven't taken this one step further to truly being something to teach your daughter the ethical right and wrong of the situation, this is just going to be a lost lesson. Well, let's go ahead and step away from family for a minute and see about a relationship and a cat. For our next story, am I the a-hole for letting my girlfriend's cat outside? Hello.
Hey.
Using a throwaway account as my girlfriend knows my Reddit. I, 25 male, started living with my girlfriend, 27 female, a few months ago, and there's always been one thing we disagreed upon, and that's her cat. She insists that her cat is purely indoors and that she doesn't want her cat left out unsupervised. Growing up, all my cats were allowed outside whenever they wanted because my parents always said that's naturally where they belonged and where they wanted to be. Her cat likes being outside and will even run near the door and beg to be let out. When my girlfriend works on the weekends, I've been letting the cat out for as long as she wants and making sure to get her in before my girlfriend arrives home. On Sunday night, I went to get the cat inside before my girlfriend got home and wasn't able to find her in time. The first thing my girlfriend does when she gets home is give her cats a couple of treats, and she asks where the cat is. I had to be honest and told her what I've been doing. She started crying because her cat is 16 and was paranoid that something might have happened to her, which I feel bad about, but I didn't have any ill intentions. I was trying to be nice and do what I feel is right for an animal. We ended up finding her in the garage shortly after this, but after the fact, we got into a fight and she's barely spoken to me over the last couple of days. Most people that I've spoken to about this think I'm the jerk here, but I think it's silly and that she's overreacting. The cat hasn't even ever left the property. In my opinion, my girlfriend is acting like I kicked her cat and hurt it on purpose. Am I the a-hole here?
My guy, you put a 16-year-old cat outside when your girlfriend has told you, do not do that. You clearly don't respect how she thinks and feels. That's an issue that you need to go solve first. But let's talk about this, because we're here now. Just because you think that the way you and your family growing up raised cats was the right way doesn't mean it's the only way. For me, he kind of already digs the hole for himself because he makes very clear every single step of the way in this story that cat is her cat, because that's how he keeps defining it, her cat. So how are you going to say that something belongs to someone else and then you're making a choice on what happens to it? How ridiculous is that?
Very.
So the fact that you think it's a nonchalant issue is the issue. It's not just about what you want and what you think. You're definitely the a-hole. You're lucky nothing happened to that cat.
So the consensus on Reddit is our OP is a gigantor a-hole. So many people came out saying a lot of different things here. The first thing being, that cat is not yours, OP, to decide that it is or is not an indoor or outdoor cat. Additionally, many individuals came out saying, do you know how dangerous it is out there? Between people and animals, you have other cats, coyotes, dogs. You don't know what could have happened. You're very lucky that nothing did happen. And others came out saying, how can you be so insensitive to the feelings and the wishes of your girlfriend? And instead, basically saying that she's overreacting because you went behind her back and did that. That's a clear sign that if you could do that in this small situation, you definitely do that in other situations too. And then lastly, individuals actually came out saying, do you know how ridiculously awful it is that cats be let out in areas that they shouldn't be? They kill thousands of birds and it messes up the wildlife by doing that. The fact that you would think that it's naturally their environment is very idiotic.
It was how he was raised, is what he's kind of amounting it all to, but you need to understand that maybe sometimes it is good to reassess how we were raised.
Just a bit. It's called thinking for yourself.
But that's always the way it's been done, okay? All cats want to be outside, especially when they're 16 and they've never been outside. Do you hear yourself? Oh, yes, cats can look and longingly see outside, but you know most of them that are house cats never want to set foot outside. They just like to watch.
Oh, yes. And if anything, I've known a lot of people who put harnesses on their cats and then walk them. I think it's absolutely adorable. They sulk about having the harness on them, but once they're accustomed to it, at least in that way, you're being a responsible owner.
I just want to put it out there that I love when I see cats on harnesses. No, we don't do that. But I love it when I see a cat being dragged on the grass that just doesn't want to be a part of any of it.
You know they're not hurting, but they're just so bratty.
Yeah, it's the best.
I don't think we could get a harness on Luna.
It's basically a Monday morning feeling.
Although she did like that collar with the little flower ones.
Yes.
So who knows? Well, let's go to our next story, and this one gets a little serious, so I'm curious what you think about it. Am I the a-hole for how I responded to my sister's HIV diagnosis? The long and very short of it is my sister recently got diagnosed with HIV. As far as I'm aware, this is from a hookup that she no longer has access to and was from a consensual encounter. She came to me on Sunday, cried about the results, and while I responded with sympathy, my reaction wasn't severe. I asked if she still had a valid insurance, and she said yes. So I said she'd be fine and that the worst of it is over then. She called me heartless and said I had no idea how ruined her life is. I kind of shrugged at her and said she just needed to adhere to treatment and she'd be fine. Again, this set her off and she called me an evil bitch because I didn't see how awful her life was about to be. And I admit, I may have been crass and said, I don't see how a mildly steepy copay is going to kill you. She was very angry with me and left me to sit on the interaction. My mom and dad are upset that I wasn't as sympathetic with her because she truly does feel as though her life is over. And at the end of the day, it's still a big deal. Am I the a-hole for how I responded?
All right. Well, we have I guess it's a family member of OP, right?
Correct, the sister.
That just found out that her life changed completely. I understand through our OP's eyes, though. It's very much don't worry about it. I don't really care.
As
Everything's
long as you
fine.
take your treatment.
Yeah. Understand that when someone comes to you, whether it's your sister, brother, longtime friend, doesn't really matter. When someone comes to you and they tell you about something as intimate as that, they're simply looking for someone to vent to. Because when you do face things that change your life permanently, there is a time where you have to grieve and accept and then move on. But that takes time. For OP, though, they just want it to happen just like that.
You got a steeper copay, but that's fine.
So given what I know, though, I would like to ask, is our OP on the spectrum?
Actually, our OP does confirm they are.
Okay, well then, I'm not giving a pass for you still not being open to being kind, but it does explain a little bit more. Given that, though, I still do believe you are the a-hole. Learn from the experience. Take the feedback that I know you got. Your sister's going through a time where certain things have to change.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is the a-hole. In fact, let me read one commenter that I think put everything into clearer perspective. Even though HIV is thankfully much better controlled with antiretrovirals, it's still a lifelong stigmatizing condition with a huge amount of social difficulties attached to having it. She's now going to have a hell of a lot of trouble with getting a partner, with conceiving naturally, even though with correct treatment the risk should be minimal, with breastfeeding her kids if she ever has them, not to mention that the treatment itself can sometimes have side effects. It's hardly something to be so flippant about. You're the a-hole. Now let me go ahead and actually provide you an edit by our OP. Edit. I don't blame my sister at all for her diagnosis. No one should expect to get a disease from a single encounter, and I don't think it's earned or justified by any means. I love my sister. She is my only sibling, and I helped raise her. And while this situation isn't perfect or ideal, I still love her very much. And my response was based in logic. It didn't come from a place of hatred or resentment. I just thought logic would help. Please stop asking if I'm autistic. It's really not relevant. 200 comments, and 2 hours later, I already see where things are going. I love my sister to death, and I'd do anything for her. And she needed me to be her rock, and I was a little too solid and literal with her. I called her and explained my side, and even linked the post to her. We cried over FaceTime, and I told her I was so very sorry for making her feel like she didn't have any support. I'll be accompanying her to her follow-up next week. She needs to know she's loved and cared for right now, so that's what I'll do for her. And for the strange amount of you who are asking if I am on the spectrum or assumed it, and to the one person who sent me a test, yes, I am. Postpartum, my final thoughts. My sister has read your comments, and she appreciates the kindness. She is feeling better. We have been helping her figure out her next steps. In this case, and in our state, the state health department is going to help her press charges because after contacting the person she was involved with, they were aware of the situation and proceeded anyhow. To the comments that asked about symptoms or how she knew, fatigue, long-lasting flu symptoms, and swollen lymph nodes. But you should always get checked. Know your status, not only to protect yourself, but to protect others. And if possible, start PrEP. To those of you who feel as if HIV is a deserved punishment, I honestly hope you can be perfect all of the time and never have any lapses in judgment. I hope you can tell when people are lying or being dishonest and be that much better than the rest of us. I have a weird amount of Vulcan and robot comments and I'd like to laugh, but also I'm very hurt to being compared to Spock, I prefer T'Pring.
It sounds like our OP at least got to see a different viewpoint and it's helped her. She was able to apologize to her sister, and going forward, she's going to be a better support system for her. And that's great.
I think, at least in my opinion, you get so many varied comments. You have a lot of people who were trying to show our OP that she was being extremely cold to her sister. And yes, being too logical by taking away all of your emotions from it can make you seem very callous. Now, you have a segment of the Reddit population who answer and are also callous in themselves by saying that contracting HIV is your deserved punishment. I can't even begin to understand those kinds of individuals. I think saying that our OP sister deserves this, that kind of karma, I can't even imagine it. Well, let's go on to our next story. Maybe kind of wipe that taste from our mouth. Am I the a-hole for telling my postpartum wife the same thing she told me? So this is a throwaway, and I really need some advice. So for some backstory about me, when I was younger, I was bullied for basically being fat. And my mother wouldn't help me lose weight. So when I got into college, I lost a lot of weight and gained muscle. And now I'm 6'5" and 240 pounds. So me and my wife have been together since we were 25. We are now 32 and had our baby 6 months ago. She had a hard time taking care of him, so I've been helping in any way I can. So I haven't had much time to go back to the gym. I haven't gained that much weight, maybe 25 to 30 pounds, which is okay because I still look good. I plan to go back to the gym when he gets on a better sleep schedule and my wife isn't so tired. She's recently been telling me that I'm getting fat and I'm not as attractive as before. I mainly brush her comments off, but she's been doing this a lot recently and it's been making me upset. I've told her this and she said she'll stop, but she hasn't. So I told her, if you don't stop, I'm going to say something you aren't going to want to hear. She laughed and said, okay, while rolling her eyes. So on Monday, she called me fatty and said that I need to hit the gym before she calls my old classmates. I said, I need to hit the gym, but it's been 6 months since you've had the baby and you shouldn't be looking like that. She ran off crying. I haven't apologized because I don't know if I'm wrong or not. If I'm wrong, I'll go apologize, but I don't know. So, am I the a-hole? Edit. She has not had any body issues in the past. She always feels like whatever weight she is what weight she is. Yes, I do love her body. I find it attractive. So I just said that to get back at her. Edit 2. A lot of you missed where I said I did talk to her about it. Edit 3. What I mean is that she's now a stay-at-home mom. So because she couldn't get him to stop crying in the morning, she wants me to take off work so she can go back to sleep. When I come home, we are equal. We both take care of him. But when I'm at work, that's her job. No, he wasn't up all night. He sometimes wakes up a little after I wake up. Yes, I wake up with him at night too. Am I the a-hole?
So it sounds like ROP let his anger or emotion in the moment get the better of him. I'm never going to be on the side of giving someone back their own medicine. Don't get me wrong though. We are all human and you can only take so much. And it sounds like that's what happened with ROP when he said what he said to his wife. I do not believe you are the a-hole. Would I have done it that way? Absolutely not. It sounds like your wife is struggling with self-image because it sounds like she's projecting a lot onto you. You may think you're perceiving that your wife is okay with her weight and she's happy with whatever weight she's at all the time in her life, but it kind of sounds like that's very much contradicted with how she's been treating you. I would suggest getting your wife into some type of counseling, talking to her about it first, because obviously you can't just force someone to go to counseling, but getting to the bottom of what it is that's bothering her about herself. Who takes that type of treatment from their partners? I would never say anything disparagingly like that to you. You're allowed to speak to each other honestly, but what you're not allowed to do is weaponize it and destroy each other. And it doesn't matter that you're a man or a woman in this situation. You shouldn't be treating your partner like that. Get to the bottom of what's actually stressing her out and causing her to treat you like that, because that will go a lot further than the both of you calling each other fat till you divorce.
I find it interesting that you say that, but let me go to our consensus and then we can get to the meat of it. So our consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. And to put it simply, a lot of Redditors say support needs to come from each other, not just one side. And that there are a lot of couples that gain and lose weight through pregnancy and the aftermath. Other Redditors actually came out saying, it sounds like your wife is emotionally abusive, and that's extremely serious. Now, there was one other Redditor that I thought brought up an interesting point and kind of sides along with what you also said, Timstradamus. They said that this screams of a postpartum onset to a mental illness. And they said, please, here's this list. You know your wife really well. If any of these ring as red flags for you, I really do think that you should get your wife checked out for some sort of mental illness that's happened because of postpartum. And I think a lot of individuals out there don't realize that sometimes mental illnesses can begin to happen. If OP's wife has never been this way before and suddenly it started up afterwards, it should be something to get looked at.
Sure.
And potentially worked out on, especially if a marriage could be at jeopardy here.
I guess we don't know enough about it, and he doesn't ever, I mean, does he ever tell us that she's always been this way towards him, or if this is something that just cropped up within the last 6 months? But
no, if anything, like I said, I think that Redditor was really nice and say, hey, look, I don't want to jump to conclusions on your wife's character, but here are a couple things for you to look through. Just at least heed this and put out there, see if there's any feelers on if this could potentially be a bigger problem than what you thought it was.
It's definitely a good keyhole to look through.
Now, I just have to go and say, this goes back to that old saying, 2 old sayings in my mind. First, if you can't say anything kind, don't say anything at all. And second, don't throw stones in a glass house.
It's very true.
Now let's go on to our next story and see what you think about this situation. Am I the a-hole for telling my niece to keep it together until you get the hell out? I, 42 male, parted ways with my brother, 42, a while ago based on differences of opinion, but he called me recently. He saw a video of his daughter, 16, slandering and insulting him on her friend's podcast. Apparently, she had been going behind his back and hanging out with people he didn't like for years. I parted ways with him when she was 5, and at that point, she already liked me a lot more than him, and he wanted me to talk to her about respect. Before I was about to talk to her, he showed me the clip from the podcast in question, and his daughter said, "Oh yeah, I fucking hate my dad. Trash human, no like. He's kept me from learning about being a mechanic. He says a woman doesn't need a degree, just an apron and a cookbook." I asked if he really behaved like that, and his answer boiled down to, well, yeah. I said nothing and waited until I met his daughter. I told her, "Move out as soon as possible. Your father is an absolute fool, and I wish I'd been here to correct him. When you've escaped, I'll support you as much as I can." Obviously, her father had a bit of a blow-up. I said nothing and left as he seethed and called me an a-hole. Am I the a-hole?
What a mess this whole thing is. So ROP is the uncle.
Correct.
But he hasn't seen his niece since she was 5.
Correct.
Okay, and that's only because the uncle and the father had a disagreement of some sort, and then he completely leaves out.
Correct.
All right. So I've got that structured. Now, the daughter is 16. She's on a podcast, and she's talking about her father and the way he views the world. So I guess after the dad heard this podcast, he contacts his brother because he knows that his daughter likes his brother, and he wanted him to talk some sense into his daughter. He gets shown the podcast, and I guess he asks his brother if these are really his values, and his brother's like, "Sure are." He's like, "You still want to come over and talk some sense into my daughter?" And OP goes, "Yups." Shows up, and in my mind does the right thing for his niece, because if that's how you're raising your daughter, if that's how you're raising your child, period, that you're locking them into the box and telling them that their life is only going to be this, you're doing them a disservice. You're basically putting the ceiling on them before they've even gotten to take off. And
There is no sky.
That's disgusting. So OP, in my mind, you did the right thing for your niece. You gave her your support and you told her that there's a way out, that your life doesn't have to be in the kitchen cooking. Don't get me wrong. Everyone should know how to cook in the kitchen, but they shouldn't be made to feel that that is their only purpose on earth. Good on you. Keep being a good uncle.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. No, I'm just kidding. Our OP is not the a-hole.
I mean, you could have got me.
I liked how you had that moment on your face where you're like, are you for real?
The internet's a wild place.
No, our OP is not the a-hole. In fact, a lot of individuals came out touting our OP as being a hero. They said, look, it is absolutely amazing that you would tell your niece that she's got a place to go when the time comes, because none of them can imagine that our OP's brother will ever truly help out his daughter.
Not all heroes wear capes. Sometimes they just look like your weird uncle.
Uncle Al. I don't have an Uncle Al, but I think that's a cool name. Well, it's been a while since we've had a wedding, right?
No.
Aww. I still want a wedding. Let's get to our next story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to apologize for calling out my aunts at a wedding? I, 26 female, have been with my partner, 27 female, for 5 years, and we are getting married next year. Overall, the wedding planning has gone pretty smoothly until now. For context, there is a large age gap in my family when it comes to the grandchildren on my mother's side, my dad's an only child. My mother had me in her mid-20s, and my 2 aunts waited till they were in their late 30s to have kids. So I've just been more of an extra aunt to a lot of my cousins, as there's about 4 of them, all between 6 and 10, all girls. Except for my cousin Kate, 25 female, who is the daughter of my mother's older brother. Now, I love my family. I do. But my aunts have always been the kind of parents who can never say no to their precious children, and that has resulted in them being spoiled brats. Over the last decade, there has not been one family event that hasn't been ruined in some capacity by a child having a tantrum over something stupid. In the last year alone, we've had tantrums over not wanting to leave a party even though the party place was closing, not having the correct flavor of strawberry ice cream at our grandfather's 85th birthday, or just getting a pack of hair bows that didn't match each other's, and many others that, to be honest, the reason why are so stupid they feel made up. And these tantrums are bad, like the full screaming, pounding the floor, and enough tears to water a field until their mothers give in to their demands. The husbands are just real walkovers, to be honest, and let their wives deal with the kids. It took a long time to even bring my partner to one of our many family events, just because I always knew these tantrums were going to happen, and I didn't want to scare her away. I work with kids, so I know this is beyond not normal behavior of kids, and I know the lack of discipline is to blame, but I've never been in the position to call it out, because in my family, it's very much, if you don't have kids, your opinion on how to raise them doesn't count. But as the kids have gotten older, it's gotten so much worse. Now, on to the wedding planning. We are not having a large wedding because neither of us want it. Between our family members we want there and our friends, it's just over 100 people. My partner's family has no kids under 16, and when the idea of having a child-free wedding came up, it was clear my partner liked the idea of no one under 16, and to be honest, I was happy with it, as well as our dogs were going to fill the roles of ring bearer and flower girl anyway, and we both knew there were going to be at least one tantrum, and neither of us wanted to subject our friends and her family to those. My parents and grandparents agreed that it would be nice to have no kids for a change, and with that, we sent the invitations out. Not long after the invitations went out, we had my cousin Kate's wedding. She grew up 3 hours away and hasn't turned up to really any family events in the last decade. But her mother made her invite everyone to show off, as there were over 400 people. Don't get me wrong, you could tell a lot of money was put into the event, and it was lovely. but I personally wouldn't have liked it for my day. Her new husband had a niece and nephew, so they did the flower girl and ring bearer roles. And yes, there were tantrums thrown when that news broke. And it only took 5 minutes into the wedding for a tantrum to happen, because one of the kids wanted to sit in the front and not the few pews back. My partner has gotten into the habit, after 4 years of these events, of keeping track of the tantrums on her notes app. And she counted 3 in the church alone. It only got worse as it was raining after, and the kids didn't want to wear jackets to get to the car, and many tears happened. The meal wasn't much better, but thankfully we were at the head table with my grandparents away from it. But you couldn't not hear the whining and shouting occasionally throughout the meal. Things got bad when, at some point before dessert, 2 of the kids came up to me and asked why they were not invited to my wedding as they had been for Kate's. A bit stunned, I just replied that the place we were having it was only for adults. That obviously was the wrong answer, because almost immediately another tantrum about how apparently their parents had promised them they would be the flower girls at my wedding erupted. Thankfully, they're small for their age, so it was pretty easy to pick them up and move them away from the head table, which was on a stage and away from people staring. While this was happening, my parents were confronted by my aunts asking how was it that their kids were not invited. My parents just repeated the same thing I had said, and this also wasn't good enough. At this point, my grandfather and I were behind them with 2 of their screaming children. I honestly don't know what came over me, but I blurted out, "You really cannot see why I might not want to have your children there on my wedding day? Can you please stop discussing this? Right now is not the time, and people are already staring at us," and left. Well, let's just say that while most of my family agreed with what I said, now my aunts are refusing to attend the wedding until I apologize to them and their kids and invite them. Some family members think it was the wrong time to say anything or just apologize to keep the peace, but honestly, I don't want to, as I don't think what I said was that bad, especially considering the thing I knew that the groom's family were saying after the wedding, from what I heard from Kate and her new husband. Am I the a-hole?
What were they saying? I mean, you left it off with that. I gotta know what they were saying.
As with what was said by Kate's in-laws not long after I got back to the table, Kate's now mother-in-law sent us over a round of drinks to help with our growing headaches, and there was a lot of, how on earth do you deal with this on a regular basis? And oh boy, they're gonna be nightmares when they're older. We were also betting with the rest of the bridal party when the next tantrum would happen. My partner won betting when there would be one just before the speeches, and a few rounds of who could guess what the reason for a tantrum was, thanks to my partner's 4-year-long notes. Kate's in-laws also share my family's dark humor, so later in the night we were betting which would be the worst once the teenage years and all those hormones hit. Was it the most adult way of dealing with it? Probably not, but was too drunk and annoyed to care about that.
So obviously ROP is definitely not the a-hole. She says it herself, though. They've been keeping track of the kids and all the tantrums that have been breaking out throughout all of their events that they've had as a family.
For the last 4 years.
Her partner has been keeping track because they've been putting in notes on the phone. I need to clarify because maybe I missed it. Why exactly when the OP says what she says to the aunts at the wedding, why did that come up?
Because the kids came up to our OP asking why they couldn't be the flower girls as it was promised by their parents.
Okay, so are we saying that the aunts basically chided the kids into that confrontation that they had?
Possibly.
It sucks that it had to happen in front of the kids, but this was very much avoidable. The aunts created this situation and the OP was trying to handle it the best way she could.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is not the a-hole. And in fact, many of them said, enjoy your wedding the way that you want and don't let them guilt you. It doesn't matter what event it is that you're at. Now, our OP actually provides us some updates. So let me go ahead and have us read into them. Okay. So never expected this post to get as much attention as it did, so yeah, here's an update. So yeah, Christmas happened, and yeah, it was apparently a shit show. I had planned ahead of time to spend Christmas with my partner and in-laws who live over an hour away, and then celebrate Boxing Day back at home with my parents and grandparents. But to my surprise, my mother contacted me late on Christmas Day just to say the Boxing Day celebrations were called off after a disastrous Christmas meal with the family, which at the last minute included the aunts and the children. So apparently, they had decided that as the family had been going no contact in the week since the events at my cousin Kate's wedding, they were going to turn up to my great-grandmother's house for Christmas and confront me about it to my face to make me apologize for calling out their kids' behavior. They usually do their own thing at Christmas and often go to their in-laws. Forgot to mention they are married to brothers who are two of the weirdest men I've ever met, but that's a rant for another day. I guess they thought if my 99-year-old great-grandmother, my mother's mom's mom, was present, I wouldn't refuse their demands. However, they failed to check that I might not be there, and according to my father, their faces when they realized their plan had backfired were hilarious. Obviously, their little terrors were running rampant and screaming their heads off, and one even had a temper tantrum because there were no presents for them under the tree. The aunts had turned up in the middle of the Christmas meal several hours after all the presents were opened, but apparently the kid couldn't comprehend that according to my aunt. At one point, my great-grandmother got so annoyed at the screaming she yanked her hearing aids out. No one in the family had thought to fill her in with what had gone down at Kate's wedding. It was one of those we all thought someone else had done so she was a bit confused at first. She knew the wedding was child-free, so she couldn't understand why they were making such a fuss about it and to just get over it. She said she'd like to enjoy the likely last wedding she'll ever attend in peace away from screaming children. My family has a very dark sense of humor. Between that and what I had said earlier, I think most of my family have just had enough of their crazy excuses. Obviously, after Great Granny said this, they went on about their poor angels, but they didn't have much of a leg to stand on, as pretty soon after they opened their mouths, the terrors had gotten into my grandmother's homemade baked Alaska and had dropped it, ruining the dessert for everyone. Apparently, my grandfather just snapped and told them to get out and let them enjoy one family event in peace, and they needed to get their children's behavior in order if they ever wanted to be invited to another family event, as their children's behavior was out of line and was only going to backfire on them the older they got. This man had served for over 10 years in the army and another 25 years as a police officer and is terrifying when he snaps. So understandably, they got out of there ASAP. My great-grandmother even opened one of her fancy bottles of whiskey to celebrate. My grandfather had been one of those who did not want to disinvite them and keep the peace. He's financially contributing to the wedding. But when I got home yesterday, he gave me full permission to rescind their invitations. I had originally decided to not rescind my aunt's invitations, but give them a warning that if they turn up with their children or try to cause a scene, they will be escorted off the property immediately. But now, after an emergency family meeting on Boxing Day, we ended up just rescinding their invitations and instead just using what we would have spent on the 4 meals on jewelry for myself, my mom, grandmother, and great-grandmother as a memento. My parents and partner are 100% behind me on this, and we're lucky that our venue is owned by my soon-to-be in-laws, and with that, security is included in the cost, as they have had several crazy family member stories from renting it out for the weddings and events over the last 30-plus years. It's run in-house by my soon-to-be brother-in-law, so we have full control of who is allowed on the property during the wedding. My maid of honor and bestie has also volunteered herself in the case of one of them turning up in a white dress to be the one to take one for the team and spill a glass of red wine. Her backup plan is using one of my boys, both West Highland Terriers who will be at the wedding, who are trained to pee on command and have an accident. She's a drama teacher, So I'd be pretty confident in her being able to make it look convincing as an accident if a worst case scenario happened. In terms of if I knew the kids coming up to me at the wedding was their parents' way of guilt tripping me, yes, I did know. This is far from the first time it has happened. For example, when one of the Terrors had their Holy Communion, it fell around the same time my partner and I had adopted our 2 dogs. We hadn't expected to get 2, but they were inseparable and we just fell in love with them immediately and took them both home. My job requires me to work Saturday mornings, so couldn't attend the church service for the communion, and there was no real way I could get it off. So early on, I made sure everyone knew I wouldn't be attending the church service, making sure to hand deliver a card with money for the child the day before with a small gift, because apparently to my aunts, money doesn't count as a gift. Anyway, later on at the meal, the sister of the child who had their communion just came straight up to me during the event and asked me why I never turned up to the church in front of everyone and asked where was their puppy. Apparently, my aunt had told them one of my puppies was for them. Let's just say tantrums happened, and the puppy they did end up getting lasted 1 week, as now it lives with my in-laws. They hadn't pulled that stunt in a while, at least not to myself, so I guess that's what threw me off more than anything else.
That was a wild update. Your aunts are a piece of work.
You want to know a piece of work?
There's more?
There's more. Let me get to our last update, and then you can see what a real piece of work her aunts really are.
Was Pop a part of it?
You're going to see. Hi, all.
Hey.
I've gotten a lot of requests in the comments and DMs to explain the weird husbands and for potential updates. This is going to be long because I had a lot of questions and an update that's pretty chaotic, so here we go. To start, the husbands are not twins, but I have a hard time telling them apart. They have the same height, same hairstyle, usually similar clothing choices, and even have the same profession. The only way I can tell them apart is that one has a faded tattoo of a bird on his eyebrow. Why he has that, I don't know. It's quite ironic because my 2 aunts would hardly classify as sisters from looks, as one looks exactly like my grandmother and the other my grandfather. It's only when you see them with my mom or uncle you can see the resemblance because they both look like they are a combo of my grandparents. They are also 10 plus years younger than my aunts. Just to clarify that, she's talking about the husbands. Not against age gap relationships in general, but it's definitely weird to see your aunt married to a guy who's only about 8 years older than you and they look young for their ages. Now for the weird stuff. They both are very weird about women, particularly women younger than them. They have this weird, almost 1950s idea about women and how they should be, and particularly with what they wear. They don't like the idea of women, particularly women under 50, wearing pants. And one of them has said to my face before how women in pants make them feel uncomfortable. I wish I could say I was kidding, but I know from personal experience, I get treated very differently by them if I'm wearing a dress or pants. They can't even look me in the eye if I'm wearing pants. I know in some cultures and religions this is a thing, but in 2024 Canada to an Irish family, this is just weird. The weird sexist ideas don't stop there, unfortunately. They've more than once mentioned they believe women shouldn't bother going into certain fields as the man will always end up as the breadwinner, as it's the father's main job to provide for the family. It feels weird to write that 2 grown men were horrified that a woman earned more than they did, but when my mother let slip that my partner's job as a corporate lawyer meant she earned more than both of them, they legit looked horrified. There's also weird things like how they'll never drive a red car. Why? Not entirely sure. Something to do with Satan, and one hates green vegetables apparently. Also, just how they interact with people is just really weird. It's hard to describe in words, but it's like that person we all have in our lives that just gives us the ick anytime you have to interact with them, and they have that in spades. Outside of their stable jobs, I don't know what my aunt sees in them. When I first met them, one of them would wear glass frames with no glass where the prescription glass would be. Thankfully, he stopped that. Finally, on the husbands, probably the weirdest thing about them is their family, particularly their mother. I've only met this woman a handful of times at family events organized by the aunts and their wedding. Yes, it was a joint wedding. And to be honest, I tend to stay away from her because her family is pretty nutty. She's one of those people where you feel like if you're stuck talking to her for more than 5 minutes, you're going to get yourself pulled into a Ponzi scheme. The highlight is she refuses to tell her children where she lives. All they know is that she always flies in off a flight from the same airport, and that's the extent they know of her whereabouts. She's still married to the dad, but they just live separately outside of holiday periods since the kids turned 18, because she doesn't believe in divorce after they had a shotgun wedding at 17. Very religious. And they just don't like each other. I think my aunts like her because they see it as they don't have to share her attention like they do with my grandparents. Her mother, the husband's grandmother, is also just very weird. She also carries a bottle of holy water with a photo of one of the popes on it, and she sprinkles it on people. I've avoided her at all costs after she tried to set me up with her unmarried nephew when I was 19. He was definitely early 30s, because apparently she couldn't compute the idea of a gay woman in general, and especially not one having long hair and liking dresses and makeup. Eye roll. So about the size of the wedding, and how apparently 100 people is actually quite large. I come from an Irish Catholic family on my mother's side, and my dad's Italian, French, Canadian, so any wedding that is under 300 people in my family is considered small. My parents' wedding, there were over 500 people there. I've also had a surprising amount of questions in my DMs about how the dogs are trained to use the bathroom on command. Well, to explain, my grandmother was a dog trainer for many years, training people with guide dogs. And one of the things she trained the dogs to do is if you say busy, busy, they know that's a signal they can go to the bathroom if they need to go. Obviously, they can go and will go otherwise. It's not just on command, but say, for example, we live in a city, so we have about 6 spots on our usual walking route that the dogs are able to use the bathroom. So whenever we pass them, we give the cue, and they know it's good to go if they need to. She's trained all the dogs in my family, so they all do that. Didn't think it was that weird. And now for the update. Buckle up, this gets weird. So for the aunts, things were eventually quiet in the days following the blow-up on Christmas Day. My aunts initially responded to the message I sent them uninviting them to the wedding with a lot of abusive text messages and phone calls. My mother stepped in and said anything they wanted to say to me would go through her, and because my aunts are scared of my mother, it stopped. We were surprised they didn't put anything on Facebook, because usually that's what happens anytime they are mad about something or someone. Overall, the rest of Christmas and New Year's was pretty great, and the headaches we had at our annual New Year's family lunch were from drinking the night before and not screaming children. Both myself and my partner don't work over the Christmas break, along with my parents, so the days following, we just kept going with the remainder of the wedding planning. My partner's a very type A lawyer who loves a spreadsheet. My mother's a financial advisor, and my mother-in-law is a wedding planner. So between them having done like 65% of the planning, I just have to come in for all the fun parts, which to be honest suits me because I do not have the brain or the patience to sit and go through the hours of budget meetings they have already done. It was after New Year's we realized the aunts didn't take the disinvite to the wedding, and along with the calling out from the family as well as we could have hoped. I don't know how, but this all happened within the last week. But things started to get weird last Wednesday when I was at work, and I got a call from my partner, which in itself was weird. Because given our jobs, we don't ever call each other during the workday. At most, we'll send each other a text or just wait till we know the other is available, so this surprised me. Apparently, my aunts tried to contact our venue that morning and cancel, with one of them claiming to be me. I'm pretty sure they were aware that the venue is owned by my soon-to-be in-laws, but if they didn't, apparently my mother-in-law made it very clear to them. Then, after that didn't work, they drove over to our old apartment building, and apparently we had forgotten to mention to them we had moved during Christmas, and the aunts got themselves arrested for trespassing, apparently because they threw a hissy fit believing we still lived there, and we told the doorman to lie for us. My partner lived in the building for 8 years and has a lot of friends still living there, including the doorman who contacted her about the incident to inform her. I have to give credit to my partner. By the time I got home from work, all of my family were informed of the events and warned under no circumstances was our new address to be shared. And if they had any contact with the aunts and I was mentioned, they were to contact her if anything suspicious came up. She's a lawyer, so she deals with anything legal anyway, and she just informs me on what I need to know. It works for us. This also was extended to our friends and anyone else we could think of, including such as our dog sitters and our residents association. And yes, my great-grandmother thought the situation was hilarious, saying, "And here I thought life would be boring at 99. They contacted my grandparents to bail them out, apparently, but thankfully, my grandparents didn't give in to their demands like they usually would. I love my grandparents, but they have always been real pushovers when it comes to my aunts their entire lives, and it seems now, over the past few weeks, they have realized what they did wrong as parents, since now it also affects their grandchildren. They were very strict with my mom and her brother, who my grandparents had as teenagers, while my aunts, who were in their early 30s, could do no wrong in their eyes. According to stories from my mom, there was nothing my aunts could do to get disciplined by my grandparents to their faces. Even when one of them got a tattoo at 15 and the other got caught drinking underage, my grandparents would complain about them to other people, but would never say anything directly to them. A lot of my mother's family didn't live close by, so there was no one with an outside perspective that really saw how bad it was, especially as they hit their teenage years, as by that point my mom and her brother were both well out of the house living their own lives, and was only when my aunts were older we had some family, such as my great-grandparents, but by that point there was not much they could do. Now, unfortunately, onto this recent Tuesday, where I got called out on my lunch break by my boss, who informed me the tires on my car had been slashed, and a letter on the front of my car with flyers with all anti-gay stuff on the windscreen. Apparently, this time it wasn't the aunts, but their mother-in-law who did it, and was later found out arrested. While at the same time, my aunts went to my grandparents' house to confront them. I'll summarize all that was said, but their anger was not so much directed at my grandparents directly, but more so about how my grandparents apparently took my side over theirs. According to my aunts, my grandparents should always back them over me because as their granddaughter, I was lower in the familiar hierarchy, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. Then the homophobic stuff came up and apparently claimed my late great-grandfather would have never approved of my life choices, and it was disgraceful their inheritance was going towards my wedding dress. For context, my great-grandfather and I were born on the same day, 75 years apart, and I was named after him, and a small part of the inheritance, when he died 13 years ago, was added into a fund that he had been set up for me when I was born to pay for things, including my education and other things that I might need, which for me currently includes my wedding dress and now 4 new tires. He wasn't extremely rich, but he had built a successful business back in Ireland, sold it to a much bigger overseas competitor in the late 70s, which allowed him and my grandmother to follow his siblings who had moved to the US and Canada in the years previous to set up an even more successful business which he sold in the 90s. The remainder of the inheritance is put away and controlled by my great-grandmother to pay for her care and upkeep of her home until she passes, and then what remains goes into the control of my grandparents. Now for the kicker. What my aunts didn't know was that my great-granny was in the next room hearing everything, and she's the complete opposite of my grandparents and takes no bullshit from anyone. Once great-grandpa was mentioned, she was fuming. If you have an Irish mammy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And she came into the room and berated them, stating she was cutting them out of the inheritance because that's all they seem to care about. That apparently shut them up and changed their tune, and my grandparents saw the monsters they created. My parents have joked before in the past that my aunts only contact my grandparents when they want something and wouldn't even think otherwise, but it's most likely their jokes were correct. And Great Granny wasn't kidding when she says she's taking them out of the will. She's already met her lawyer today to discuss changing the will. At this point, I didn't know if I should be laughing at the absurdity of the situation or crying from the stress this has brought. Like, seriously, how does a comment about screaming entitled children embarrassing the family at a wedding result in me considering talking with a lawyer about pursuing harassment charges, and now the feeling that I've ripped my grandparents' vision of their family up? My parents and partner have been my rocks, and honestly, I don't know what I would do without them backing me up. Also, thanks to everyone on here with your comments and DMs letting me know I'm not going crazy. I know something like this was eventually going to happen, and I'm glad the families are on the same page, but I never imagined it would be this chaotic.
That update was long. I don't live a drama life, because if this is what you're going to measure it up against, wow. I'm happy that you have a supportive family. Yes, there was definitely some dropping of the ball on parenting for a couple generations, it sounds like, because your grandparents now admit that they didn't go about it the right way with your aunts.
And now your aunts are unhinged.
And now they're doing it with their kids. And so on and so forth, unfortunately. It played out the way it was supposed to, I guess.
I guess. It just goes to show that it only needs that one domino to start a chain of events you're not expecting.
I mean, they're slashing tires. They're trying to call the venue. Thank goodness that it was controlled by her fiance's family and they knew the BS that was coming their way. Like, this could be a movie.
It could be. I bet you there's probably a lot of lives out there that could be changed into a movie.
Canada.
Who knew?
There you go.
Well, let's go on to our next story.
Y'all got some wild families over in Canada.
Well, while we go ahead and drop away some of the family drama, let's go to our next story and see about this drama. Bet you won't stand up to our last one, but we'll see.
I don't know if anything can.
Am I the a-hole for telling my wife's friends and family they have no say in her funeral? My wife passed away suddenly 2 months ago in a car crash. She was only 26. My wife's best friends, J and B, both insisted on being involved in the funeral process because my wife has given them specific instructions in the event of an early death. My parents, however, offered to pay for the funeral if it was done in their Southern Baptist church and she was buried. They said that it was better that way so I can use the life insurance money to buy a house for me and my daughter. Here's the problem. My wife was not Christian or any denomination. Her friends told me that she wanted to be cremated. She didn't want a church funeral. She didn't want any flowers, and she definitely didn't want a viewing. She wanted people to just let her rest and celebrate her life. My parents think this is a tacky way to mourn. I told her friends what my plans were, and they were pretty upset with me. They got my in-laws involved and my wife's brothers. Her parents and her grandmother all begged me not to hold the funeral at a church. I tried explaining to everyone that my parents are paying for it and they want it done their way. No one was listening to me though, and after a few days of thinking it over, I made a group text telling everyone that they have no say in how I plan my wife's funeral. Everyone was upset. Nobody has talked to me since her burial. I'm upset because I feel like everyone left me to grieve by myself. I'm feeling like an a-hole. Edit. I already see some common questions in this post, so I'll get it out of the way. My daughter is not her daughter. We were only together for 2 years, so we didn't really get a chance to discuss death, and it made me uncomfortable to do so. Am I the a-hole?
What a very tragic story on like every level of this. I am sorry your wife passed. Sounds like you guys were only together 2 years.
Correct.
What a life unlived. She was only 26. It's very tragic. So there is definitely something to be taken from this type of story. Have the conversations with your loved ones about how you want things done, because it sounds like the OP had a way he wanted to do it, but not the way that his wife wished it to be done. Now, he does say it though. His parents do offer to pay for the funeral if it's held the way they want it. So instead of the way his wife had set it up was being all paid for through the insurance.
Correct. The life insurance.
His parents, I guess, superseded the entire thing, had her funeral the way they wanted, and then told him to pocket the money and to use it to, I guess, buy a home for him and his daughter. The way someone wants to be buried should be respected.
Especially if they're making sure to cover those costs.
Instead, he benefited greatly from the death. No, I'm not trying to paint him as this great overall villain, but I just do, in the back of my head, have an itch asking, why is it that he maneuvered it this way? I am sorry that she did pass. I just don't like the way it almost sounds like manipulated the situation to where his wife wasn't getting her wishes. Like, that's the least you could have done for this situation. And then to top this whole shit cake off with, you grab all of her friends and family, put them into a single chat, and then tell them, screw off. It doesn't matter what you guys think she wants. I'm giving her what I want. But I am certain that they all probably knew about this life insurance. I mean, maybe that's a little too far, but...
I don't believe so. Otherwise, the whole family wouldn't be begging for him not to do this. Especially if the grandmother were coming out and saying, please do not hold a service for her in a church.
He knows his wife didn't have a denomination. He puts it in the story. And just so he can get his hands on the insurance money, he's willing to desecrate his wife's memory. That makes her a very foul person. OP, you are the a-hole. And the worst part is, there's no fixing what you've done. My sincerest question would be, did her family and friends that actually loved her go to the funeral?
OP never answers that.
That is so heartbreaking.
So let me go ahead and give you the consensus on Reddit. Our OP is a gigantic a-hole. And Reddit came down real hard on him. They were not kind with the many things that they had to say. For a lot of them, they see it as he ensured that he robbed his dead wife. That's one of the kinder things.
I tried to be kind.
Oh, I'm telling you, the way that they went hard. I must say, if you have someone who has wishes such as what they would like done when they are gone, and have made the proper arrangements, have let their family know, even if that was not a discussion between you and them, it is so important to respect those wishes. Because even if OP loves his wife and is grieving for her loss, it does not show in his actions. The only thing that he showed, essentially to all of the internet and in this story alone, was that he was getting a payout. And he was doing it because his parents wanted it that way. Now it's hard. He's in his mid-20s. That's going to be a grief and a guilt he'll need to live with. Because for a lot of commenters, they were shocked that that this wasn't just a situational, am I going to be the a-hole? But was I the a-hole for doing this? This is done. This cannot be reversed. And I think that makes it even worse. I must say, you know me, Timstradamus. I don't like talking about what the end would be like. I'd prefer to continue living a good life and being more in the present than I am in a future that is unknown. But if there's a way for you to write down and let people know that you want to be rested in a certain way, whether it's cremation, a burial, or in my case, I would love a tree pod burial. Like, that is the way that I would like to be buried. To know that a part of me is going to keep something else living and being more purposeful in my life after death.
We've had that conversation. I said I would respect that if we have to cross that bridge.
And I think that's the difference here. There were many people in his late wife's family that was telling him that this is the way that she wanted it done. But he superseded all of that because all that we see is that he was greedy and selfish. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about this one. Am I the a-hole for staging an intervention of sorts for my best friend and calling my brother possessive? One of my 23 female best friends since nursery, Celeste, 23 female, has been seeing my brother Henry, 29 male, for almost a year. In that year, Celeste and I went from hanging out at least 3 times a week and talking on the phone every day for at least 2 hours to hanging out once a week and calling maybe once a week for an hour as well. She hangs out with Henry every day because they practically live together now. I've known Henry all my life. I don't find him interesting enough to hang out with daily. From what we've seen on Instagram, Celeste also hangs out with Henry's girlfriends quite a lot after work. I used to think Celeste's change was because of her demanding job, but it's not. It's not just me she stopped hanging out with in our friend group. We all discussed Celeste's change in behavior in our private group chat without her and came to the conclusion that she's just acting like this because Henry is her first boyfriend, her first kiss, her first everything. I believe she's infatuated with him and not really valuing her friends because of it. Celeste is the sweetest person, so we thought she wasn't doing it on purpose and decided to be nice about our concerns. Yesterday was my best friend Eve's birthday dinner. We had a private room and decided to do a kind of intervention for Celeste. She was pretty much trapped because Lynn had driven us all the way to dinner, so she had to listen to what we had to say. I started by saying it was nice to be hanging out with her and how we'd been doing it less and less since Celeste got into a relationship. She responded by saying that she's the only one that works. She's tired after work and just likes to chill, watch movies, then sleep. Lynn told her she can do all those things at our weekend sleepovers, which she's been missing for 2 months straight. Celeste got quiet, so we just kept going on about how she was hurting us and how when she's single again because Henry isn't the type for a long-term thing, she might not have us to lean on or hang out with because she's pushing us away. We might have went overboard by calling her some things, but we were just trying to get our point across. She responded by claiming she doesn't like how I talk about Henry, my own brother, and how she gets tired of going out drinking like it's the only thing we do. She did say she'll do better and she's sorry. Later, Henry called and went off on me for attacking Celeste. He could have called everyone involved, but just targeted me for some reason. He called me an a-hole, jealous, and many other things. So I called him possessive and controlling because it's his fault Celeste won't hang out with us as much. I told her he's acting like an abuser by isolating her from her friends, who are her main support system after her family. Of course, he told everyone in our family, and now I'm being called anything but a child of God. Am I the a-hole, or does everyone suck here? Just to add a little bit more context into OP, let me read to you a comment that she put in the comment section. Celeste is the only one in our friend group who hadn't been in a relationship until my brother. None of us are jealous of her relationship. We are all in relationships and manage to prioritize our sisterhood. Celeste doesn't need to work. She chooses to and is using that as an excuse to justify being a shitty friend. We don't need to sabotage something. Henry isn't a relationship person. She'll be single again soon and regretting pushing us away. Am I the a-hole?
I mean, how would you not see what you're putting down? There's a lot of interesting things in this story because, I mean, I'll go with the first thing that comes to my mind. She says Celeste doesn't need to work. Why doesn't someone need to work? Unless we're talking about trust fund kids?
It could be trust fund kids or maybe like a different bracket of family when it comes to how wealth is made.
You're a terrible friend. And everything you told me contradicts everything you're trying to accuse your brother of. Because she says it where he's trying to isolate and do all these things, but then she's telling me she's spending a lot of time with his friends and their girlfriends and she's living her life still, just not doing it with them. And then Celeste, after they confront her, because this is the worst part of this story, They take her on a girls' night out, I guess, for someone's birthday. They
Correct.
rent out a room. And this is solely for the fact of, I don't know how many girls are in this group, but all of you do this impromptu intervention at what's supposed to be a celebration. You rented this small room to attack her. And then you take turns calling her names. I'm assuming is what she says, because she's like, some choice words were dropped, whatever that means. And then you tell her that your brother is going to ditch her and you're going to be sorry for it when it happens because you pushed us away. What kind of friendship are we in? This is
Toxic.
This is next level mean girl stuff. For what reason, I don't know, outside of you're jealous and you're possessive. I understand having friendships. And yes, sometimes after work, instead of going out and drinking with the boys or with the girls, you like to just turn on something, turn the brain levels function down to 0, and just enjoy each other in the company of watching something together.
Like the Timstradamus channel.
No. Sometimes that's just more enjoyable. Not every night, but it happens. She goes, well, now we go from talking on the phone 2 hours a day.
I can't even imagine that, by the way.
A day?
A day. It's like...
With a friend? I understand catching up. I get that. But when you're doing that on a daily basis, and that's what you're expecting out of another human being, and then hanging out 3 times a week, when Celeste works, there's only so many hours in a day that you can give to other people.
But apparently that dumb witch, she doesn't have to work.
It's insane.
You hear
but maybe we're talking about people in a different bracket. Regardless, even if you are in a bracket where you don't have to work, you still shouldn't be treating friends like that. That's awful. And I hope that our OP took the advice I'm certain she got slapped with.
Oh, she got slapped with it so much that she deleted her account and the post. But as you can already surmise, the consensus is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. They are special turducken, this one. Aside from, I had to add in the comment in there so that you can really gauge her character. Many individuals were coming forward and saying, you are an overbearing friend. You're the controlling one. That's why Celeste has been distancing herself, because if all of you figured out a way to essentially
trap her.
Yeah. You lured her away where she couldn't get away so that you could verbally abuse her and manipulate her into feeling bad about her relationships and her choices. And then you think it's okay. You put it under the guise of sisterhood, which for a lot of people made them gag. Based on most of the reactions, a lot of them said after they heard sisterhood, they
checked out.
Yep. They're just like, done. This whole thing is done. That is such a toxic way to look at things. And then on top of that, to essentially try to predict the doom of a relationship is when it comes to your actual own family. It's
unsat.
Just because you don't have any interest in your brother doesn't mean that your friend who's in a relationship with your brother doesn't have any interest in him. I cannot, for the life of me, comprehend. And who knows? There could be thousands of people that do this. I am not a phone talker. To have to put away 2 hours of my life a day to call someone on top of the 3 days a week I am seeing them.
That's a lot.
That's excessive in my mind. Whew, this whole thing.
I can just hope that the OP took the advice and maybe can structure their friendships a little more healthy going forward and not attack each other for good things happening in their lives.
Well, let me go ahead and send out a message to Celeste. Celeste, you have a very lovely name, by the way. You do you, girl. Don't let anybody phase you the other way. If you want to keep working because that's what makes you happy, even if you don't have to, do you. It shouldn't be anybody else to tell you and make you feel bad about your relationships and what you want to do in your life.
You're here.
Well, let's go ahead and go to our very last story of the day, and I think it's an interesting situation. Am I the a-hole for suggesting my friend go back to therapy after how she reacted in a Chinese restaurant? So yesterday, me, 28 female, Jess, 27 female, and 3 other friends, mid to late 20s, went to a Chinese restaurant. I'm Chinese. Jess is half Japanese/Chinese, and the rest of my friendship group are Asian, if that's relevant. For context, Jess unfortunately was the victim to a verbal racist attack when COVID first started. It was such an awful thing to happen, and I'm still mad it happened. The incident traumatized her quite badly, and she went to therapy for a couple of years. We are getting seated, and there is a Caucasian man with his son, maybe 6 to 8 years old. They smile at me, and I smile back. Anyway, our food comes, and the kid is curious, and I can hear him asking his dad, "What are those ladies eating?" The dad happily explains to his son the different kinds of seafood like pipas and pork belly and noodle dishes we are eating. It was really clear that they weren't making fun of the food or us, and honestly, I thought it was cute that the kid was interested. But Jess started getting agitated. I asked her what was up, and she said she didn't like that they were talking about us. Me and my friend tried to just say that they were just talking about the food we were eating. Unexpectedly, as Jess is quite shy, she stood up and said to the dad, "This isn't a zoo, you know." Then she walked out, and some of us followed her out, and me and another friend apologized to the man and kid who were really shocked. Outside, we were trying to console Jess. She was adamant that the man was teaching his kid to be racist, but we were all trying to tell her it wasn't like that, and she said we were invalidating her. This went back and forth with us trying to say that the man and kid weren't being racist. Finally, in my effort to try to help, I suggested maybe Jess should go back to therapy. Jess gave me a really dirty look, called me a friend, and laughed. A couple of my friends, although acknowledging that the way Jess reacted to the man and kid was abnormal, told me it wasn't my place to suggest that. But my other friend said that I wasn't wrong, and as her friend who cares about her well-being, I had a right to suggest that. Jess and I have been friends since high school, and I spent a great deal of time supporting her after the racist incident. Am I the a-hole?
No, you're a true friend. Real friends shoot straight. If not for your friends, whose place is it to tell you the truth? Because I'm not hearing where Jess, the woman that's accusing the father and son of being racist in the restaurant, I don't think I heard that she has a partner.
To kind of ground her, no.
So it is definitely wrong for your friends to have looked at Jess and said, it's okay. And no, I'm not saying they are saying that what she did was okay. What I'm saying is you're looking at your friend, you're seeing her essentially spiral. And I can understand because it sounds like Jess went through a traumatic experience of her own. And that kind of put her in a, well, now we can see here where she's very paranoid. That can be dangerous
and aggressive.
It is definitely your place as a friend to help a friend. Tell them the truth. True friends do that. So OP, continue to talk to your friend. Obviously, you can't force people into therapy or counseling. And it is very true what they say. Counseling does nothing for people who don't want to be there. So she's got to want it first. But definitely, please keep talking to her because she might be going down a path that, I mean, we're already seeing it. If you're being aggressive and that's not your nature, and you're screaming at someone in a restaurant who's simply talking to their kid about the food, it sounds like it's already gone down pretty far. So I hope that you can stay a true friend, but you're not the a-hole OP.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely not the a-hole. In fact, let me go ahead and read to you one comment, which falls in line with what you said, Timstradamus, and the response from OP. So the commenter says, not the a-hole. Real friends call you out and try and help you, which is what you try to do. And you're right, it sounds like Jen does in fact need to go back to therapy because she really cannot go around verbally attacking people for innocent things like wanting to learn about her culture. The boy was interested in your food and may have wanted to try it, and his dad was encouraging and indulging his curiosity by answering and educating his kid. This was a healthy learning moment, and your friend basically made them feel uncomfortable for it. Our OP responded and said thank you. My friend went back to the restaurant to try to talk to them, but they had left by the time she got back. We feel really awful about it. No one should be spoken to like that, especially a little kid who is so impressionable. Now, our OP did provide us an update, so let me go ahead and read that as well. Thanks everyone for your replies. For those asking what happened, essentially a group of men approached and surrounded her at a train station, shouting racist comments at her. If someone hadn't intervened, she would have very likely been bashed or sexually assaulted. For those saying I should drop her as a friend, We've had a friendship that's lasted nearly 15 years. I'm not going to give up on her because of an incident like this. And she honestly has never done anything like this before. She needs support. And when the incident occurred, I didn't know how to appropriately handle it. Thank you, everyone, for your advice about it being wrong timing. Upon reflection and talking with my friends, we realized that none of us saw the signs early enough during that dinner that she was in crisis. We should have seen it when she started getting agitated inside the restaurant and perhaps taken her outside for a moment instead of dismissing her. None of us are really equipped to deal with someone in mental crisis, and we are considering going to mental health first aid. Finally, I tried to call and then message Jess and apologize, but she did not reply. However, her mom did call me today. I did not message her mom and told me that Jess felt really bad about what happened and wanted to apologize to me and my friends. Jess also said she didn't mean what she said about me being a bad friend, and she was having a panic attack at the time. Jess isn't feeling ready to talk to us yet and would rather her family support her for now until she's feeling better. In the meantime, we will be sending chocolates and self-care items.
Well, at least our OP knows that she's a good friend. That's important. You got to be able to shoot straight with the people you love.
Yeah, I think this is one of those difficult situations where you're trying to do what's best for everyone at that time, and there's no one that's really at fault. I mean, in this case, Jess had a truly traumatizing experience, and this is one of those things where hate breeds more hate. And it's happened so much that she took this incident that was really, it was innocent. It was a question from a boy to a father on a culture and a food that he's trying to learn about. And Jess sees it as an attack because she was attacked first. It is so difficult to understand that when you are the victim, sometimes you can, I guess, unknowingly create more victims because you took that hurt and that hate that was aimed at you and you're aiming it at others.
And that's very true because the child and the parent got to feel that, and it just keeps going down. It's a very unfortunate event. Just continue to be a good friend. I know that that's a tough situation. At least her mother reached out and you know where your friend's at. Hopefully through all of this, she can get the healing she needs because, like we say, you see in the world what you carry in your heart. And right now, unfortunately, there's a lot of dark there.
But at least Jess has a good friend in OP and she has her family helping her. And that right there is such a good foundation.
Yes. So was that our last story?
That was our last story.
I just want to say that there was one of the stories, I can't remember which one, but one of them said it was about the not assuming. I assume a lot in our escape rooms, and normally they're right.
You don't assume, you guess. Don't even.
Hey! Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays. I also want to give all of our heartfelt thanks to all of our patrons for your continued support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of you.
Mwah!
Well, as always, listeners, we look forward to your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
Which one really spiraled you through a doozy? I have to say, that Canadian-Irish family, that whole story.
That thing just kept going.
It really did start from just before Christmas to literally just a week ago.
Your aunts are definitely something else.
Unhinged.
All right, listeners, I will leave you off with one final question. What made you smile today?
I think the rain has made me smile today. Hearing the pitter patter has been so nice.
And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.